Gracias, Claudia. What Claudia mentioned, right, we're focusing on those three priority areas that came about as the agenda at the United Nations in December. And we'll start off with, and you know, the panel is comprised of different sectors. We have media, tech, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, civil society, and corporate America. So each of our panelists here represents each of those industries. And the main purpose of this panel is to identify how within each of these industries represented, we can advance the Vision 2020 themes of education, financial empowerment, and perception through the lessons learned and best practices. We'll start off with education. The Vision 2020 concept is about mobilizing a community to have a shared agenda towards cooperation in the three areas. And the first question is, what are some best practices that you have seen from your industry to support this Vision 2020, specifically in education? And so I'll start off with Don, here to my right, to first share about philanthropic support in your area.
Sure, thank you. This is a great group, and Claudia, thank you for getting everybody together. Before you can really say what philanthropy can do, you have to be sure you understand what it can't do. When it comes to the world of education, philanthropy has basically a drop in the bucket of the money that the big public systems have. And so our job really is to look for those opportunities and gaps where we really can leverage the resources we have for the best purposes. At the McCormick Foundation, for example, we have a sole focus for almost 30 years on early childhood education to get every kid, particularly in Illinois, but every kid in Chicago, Illinois, the best start they can, be ready for kindergarten, be able to read by third grade, and so on. And we find, for example, that the Hispanic community, the number of slots taken up by kids from the Hispanic community is under the percentage that it should be. So we have to do some research. Why is that? How do we improve the professional development of the teachers, the pre-K folks, and improve access? And so that's where we would work with the hope that as we learn and come up with models and pilot things, that the big systems would take it on, with the government money, the public education system would take those jobs on and make it available for everybody.
Wonderful, thank you, Don. And so I'll move on to Terry regarding the media and the role that the media can play.
So in terms of education, there's a great story of one of our DJs who says that, and like this, there's so many, from people who watched, I'm sure a lot of the people sitting in this room, we grew up watching Univision. And the DJ says that some girl went up to him and said, "Oh, I went to college because my mom heard about a scholarship on Univision Radio." And that really, I think, is a testament to the power that we have in media. I think there's some distinctions that need to be made between what happens in English language media and in Spanish language media, because I think we have and are given the ability to hyper-focus and be singularly focused on empowering the Latino community, and we do that. And we've been doing it. I don't mean to have a shameless plug here, but we live our brand, and there's those examples like that. So when we sit in our editorial meetings every morning, we oftentimes, first of all, we have more stories that come out about connecting our community to resources that are out there. Many of the people who are sitting in this room send me press releases all the time, and we have you on the air all the time because we are that connector. I think that's also the beauty, right, of broadcasting, why I fall in love with it, because we can make that incredible change by amplifying the message and connecting the community to those resources. So
awesome, thank you, Terry. And I know you supported this event and the ASA event as well with the new station. Alberto, can you share a little bit more specifically how we can empower the community to take control of our future?
Well, I think that the most important thing that we need to do is we need to take control of the narrative. We can't let anybody tell our story. We need to be telling our stories. We need to be telling our stories of success. Our kids, our people need to see how far they can go. And the only way they can do that is if we empower them and if we show them how far they can go. Our dreams have been cut short. We've been dreaming short. We need to dream, like Claudia was saying before, about being the president, the next president of the United States. Our dreams need to be big, and we need to believe that. Let's tell our story, and again, let's not let anybody say who we are.
Thank you. We're moving on to the second area of financial empowerment, which can mean a lot of things, from starting a small business, seeking different types of financial services. The bigger purpose here is to strengthen financial well-being, and this is a two-part question. The first one being, what are some of the biggest challenges for U.S. Hispanics to achieve long-term financial well-being? And the second part, what are the opportunities for your industries to reduce the disconnect between available resources and financial services for U.S. Hispanics? So I will start with Raul. Can you tell us a little bit about the Resurrection Project is doing to improve the financial well-being in the community?
Thank you. If I could just say something on that education question. We need also options and choices. I'm a product of the public school, but we also need other models to make sure that our kids are educated. There's some good charter school models, and here in Illinois, there's a legislation to help tuition tax credits, legislation to pass so our kids can go to, for example, Catholic schools and get a good, solid education as well. So we need all sorts of options to get our kids educated. On the financial literacy education, most of our families have very few vehicles by which to build wealth over time. One of the few ways they do so is by buying a home the right way, making sure that they're able to buy it, maintain it, and sustain it. We saw what happened during the recession. Much of the lost wealth came from communities of color, particularly Latinos, but that has rebounded for Latinos. So two things. One, we've got to make sure that in doing it again, make sure they do it right, because the dangers are there. There's still a lot of predatory lending that's going on. And one of the challenges in our communities is the wealth gets sucked away by predatory lending. Instead of building it, it gets sucked away because there's too many still those kinds of situations that led to the recession. We also have to figure out a way that our community starts looking at other tools. Again, homeownership done right is one of the few tools, but they don't invest in the stock market. They don't have fancy insurance instruments. And the businesses that are being generated, as we saw earlier, they also have to figure out how to access capital, which is not necessarily available yet to our community. As an organization, we have a lot of wealth building strategies. We also develop assets in the community, both tangible and non-tangible assets, as well as community ownership is very important.
Thank you, Raul. The other part of the question is, what are 2 to 3 outcomes you have with the credit union and loans to undocumented immigrants?
This is a fascinating story that 5 years ago we helped rescue a savings and loan in the Chicagoland area. Most of the small banks did not have access to TARP funding, so they were left at their own peril. This one suffered the fate of being taken over by the FDIC. $140 million in loan. 1,100 families were about to get foreclosed on. So we were able to assist, and now 5 years later, 1,100 families, 95% still live in their home. Means they continue to build wealth. They're above water and so forth. Now, that's not the success story. Success story is 5 years later, this institution, Second Federal Credit Union now, has done over 1,500 more new mortgages, all 99%, I should say, to I-10 families. Over $200 million of community lending has been done in our communities. That is the power of our community. And in addition to that, it's also providing more wealth into these communities because it has created product that the community needs. So for example, if you're an undocumented immigrant and you bought a vehicle, you have very little choices. You go to a car dealership and they'll charge you 30% interest rates, right? Credit union is now doing loans between 7 and 8% depending on the profile of the family. So it's not just about building wealth, but building the right products so that people can have disposable income.
Thank you. And Marcelo, we'll shift to technology and entrepreneurship and its relationship to financial empowerment. You are leading some interesting work around technology and entrepreneurship. What are the opportunities you are seeing for entrepreneurs and technology to integrate into the market economy?
Well, thank you for the question and thank you for having us. Technology is changing the business and our lives, right? I mean, I think you see it. Every single industry is becoming disrupted as we speak. Last year, 2018, venture capital firms have injected $130 billion to help technology entrepreneurs to build their businesses. The first quarter of 2019, we are pacing at around $30 billion, right? So it's booming. Absolutely, it's a great opportunity. It is a career opportunity. We were talking about education. I would love to see tech entrepreneurship as a career opportunity and educate people to be good at that. But where are we Latinos? Latinos we are just getting 2% out of that money I mentioned before. And it's not that we are not doing things to help our community. We're doing many things. We have incubators, we have VCs really committing to help minority. But my challenge to the whole system is I think we need to change the how we are doing it, right? I think we need to really think differently, and I like to talk about being intentional, right? And being intentional in the way we collaborate as an ecosystem. We're all doing our small part very well, but we're fragmenting the solution to a problem that is going to be solved if we get all together in the same page. The second thing is being intentional, actually, with the industries that we want to play. There are industries that are very close to our hearts and where technology can actually help. Financial industry, fintech, big time. Healthcare, right? So the third thing is about being intentional about the amplification of our impact. Today, we are really focused on Silicon Valley, right? I mean, we look for entrepreneurs mostly in Silicon Valley, mostly in the East Coast. I was in Nashville a week and a half ago talking to entrepreneurs in the music industry, and they're asking for help. There are many Latinos there that need our help. So I will ask Silicon Valley actually to create a new acronym. SV is not Silicon Valley, suban el volumen. How do we hear the great things that we have in Silicon Valley across the US?
Thank you. Agree with that. to Don, can you talk about the role of philanthropy and its grant-making, philanthropic capital as a mechanism to support workforce development, leadership development, and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, this is an interesting area for philanthropy because we don't create jobs. You know, we're not business people building companies, but we're involved in all sorts of ways. We have in McCormick, we have a particular relationship in Little Village, so we're working on all sorts of economic development opportunities there, and we're about to start up a cohort of 5, supporting 5 entrepreneurs individually, Hispanic entrepreneurs, which we're excited about. We think largely they're going to be women as well. And this will be and this is not an investment because we don't want to take the wealth back. These will be loans and outright grants to young entrepreneurs who are building businesses, and so we think we can play a role there. We do workforce development and so on, but that's the kind of way we're going to get at it is sort of helping systemically and then some specific entrepreneurs to build their businesses.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And so, what are the quick fire here? What are the main challenges that exist to achieve long-term financial well-being? Terry, we'll start with you.
I'm not sure that it's
We have 30 seconds each.
Oh.
Okay. This is a rapid-fire one.
I think to your point, I want to echo what you said, Marcelo, is just to think as the collective and the strengths in the numbers and owning our being Latino, because we blend in really just too well most of the time, and that sort of diminishes our numbers.
Thank you. Raul?
Immigration reform will add another $1.4 trillion to the economy, driven primarily by Latinos. Economic power equals political power, and that is very important. So we need more owners, producers, and decision makers in the Latino community, not just consumers.
Marcelo?
I think I would say we need to change our relationship with debt and really, accept financial help to grow our businesses, right? I think we have like a negative perception about debt. So specifically in tech entrepreneurship, how do we get comfortable getting debt to grow our companies?
Alberto?
I'll give up my 30 seconds.
Okay. Don? I'll give back to you.
I think access to capital, and there
I
are...
don't think you're... Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And there are things, developing things with J.P. Morgan Chase here, and for entrepreneurs of color, and those are the kinds of things we want to continue to build, access to capital.
Yeah. I added you on. I know
And
you
sorry,
weren't originally
yeah, I was
supposed
thinking of the next question, but actually I was thinking I had an answer there. And we need to encourage our companies. I come from corporate America, that we need to invest in economic empowerment. 90% of the investment that we do at Miller Coors goes towards economic empowerment with the Hispanic community. It's very important that we make sure that our communities thrive and that they do well.
Thank you. So our third pillar is perception, and so we're going to move into that. It's misperception and stereotypes are key barriers for the growth of any community. The U.S. Hispanic community is often seen as takers, not makers. Let's talk about the opportunities you see in each of your industries to help change the visibility around the U.S. Latino community. So 2 to 3 examples, and we'll start with Terry. Media seems like the easiest lift. From your perspective, what changes are required and what can media do to help retell the Latino story? And what is the role of news media?
So I think first of all, I think what we have is a PR problem, not an actual problem, which is that we have to change and own our own story, and that doesn't just happen within, I think we have to think about perhaps some larger campaign in which we can all own and then own that story. And then the other part I would say is we're really lagging behind in terms of English language television and the amount of Hispanics that are there. And what I will tell you is that a lot of Hispanics, because I have been in English language, that do make it tend to blend in and sort of give up that being Latino. So I think that does a disservice, right? It's not just the diversity, but also the inclusion in order to have the story form be reflective of our audience and really paint a picture of Latinos. And then the other thing is I would encourage the people in this room who are the ones who are paying for advertising to hold some sort of accountability to some of those television stations who are not, who are portraying us in an inauthentic way.
Do what Beyonce did. She walked out. Do you guys know about that?
Amen.
We walked out on Reebok for not being inclusive. Alberto, so as a representative of corporate America, what are some of the challenges and solutions you see for the community?
Well, I think that, again, the big challenge is a lack of understanding of our power, our potential, how strong we can be when we come together. Adding to that, the narrative that is not being controlled by ads. So somebody's telling a different story of who we really are. A very negative story that doesn't match the reality. That has created, from corporate America, I've noticed 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when the first census came out that was talking about the power of Hispanic and the growth, it became really cool to be Hispanic. It was popular. We were going backwards and trying to regain, some people were going back and learning their language and regain and understand and own our culture. The last 2 years, I think that we've gone back to hiding a little bit. We need to come out of the hiding, and we need to show how proud we are, and we need to tell our story. The other challenge is that I believe that corporate America in the past had this feeling that it was mandatory to take care of the communities in need. I feel today that mandatory is not there anymore. It's a good to do. So if it's a good to do, the only power that we have is to raise our voice and show what we can do and the power that we have. So telling our story, showing those numbers that really represent who we are and the power that we have will help everybody advance and take control of our future.
Thank you. So we have, I'm told, a minute left, right? So I want to jump into the rapid fire for this particular question. Don, we'll ask that you each talk to your specific industry regarding what is one or two things your industry could do to promote and mobilize the shared agenda for the community, and what would they be? We'll start.
Well, there's a lot to choose from, and philanthropy can help across the board. One is community news and strengthening the voice in the communities and civic empowerment and civic engagement work. We're doing that. We're working on immigration and the census issues as well. And so I think there's a wide range of good topics there, and those are 4 of them.
Thank you. Terry?
I think that if more media would adopt the mindfulness that we see within Spanish language media about what are the portrayals, what are we putting on the air, and we know that there are children watching our television station every single day with their family, and they are crafting that narrative of who they are, and so hence, oftentimes I will say that that is why we have the heads of companies, the people, so the astronauts on the air, so that these children begin to craft a different perspective of who they can be. And so I also, with that, take the opportunity to tell any of you who are in the room, you're clearly people who are very important and who are role models for all of our audience, that you reach out to me, because I need stories like yours on the air, because that's the only way we're going to take back our narrative.
Thank you for offering that up.
I'll, even though I already talked, but I think that one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that we understand that the opportunity is not a long-term opportunity. It's now. It's now when we need to act, and it's now when we need to take control of it.
I think I would say in the technology area to build a coalition between entrepreneurs, incubators, busy firms to really lift our cohort to the right level, right? And remember, I mean, technology is at the core of humanity, not only business. So we want to build technology with the same diversity that we want to find in the human race.
We need to be the sculptors of our own destiny and make sure that we get out of our comfort zone. Democrats take us for granted and Republicans don't understand us. And we need to figure out how to build the right alliances to make sure that our community progress in all areas. Right now in the New York Times, there's an article, part of the American Business Immigrant Coalition, where the voices are non-Latino fighting an anti-immigrant bill in Florida. So I encourage you all to look at it. That's the kind of work that we need to do.
Please join me in thanking the panel. Thank you, guys.